This is shift lock. Now it may not look like much, as this is a very subtle technique, but it is extremely helpful in gaining total control over your car. In a nutshell, shift lock allows us to rotate the car without inputting either throttle, brake or steering. In this video I'm going to be telling you all you need to know about shift lock and then showing you how to do it in both a grip and drift manner. So make sure you stay tuned because you won't want to miss out on this one. In my opinion, shift lock is a technique that doesn't get enough attention. Sure, its applications may be niche and it may have a certain reputation for grenading transmissions, but we'll just gloss over the latter. So what specifically is shift lock? In essence, shift lock is when the car is doing say 80 miles per hour and you put it down into third and let the clutch out. All of a sudden, the drive wheels are going to want to slow down and they're going to be doing about 30 miles per hour while the rest of the car is still travelling at 80. If you're going at a decent pace and are near the limit, your tyres are already at the limit of adhesion. The jerky downshift and clutch release gives you what is called shift lock. In a rear wheel drive car, it's almost like putting the handbrake. Once you engage shift lock, the rear tyres are either going to slow down massively or totally lock up. If you do this in an all-wheel drive car, all four tyres will lock up and you'll enter a four-wheel drift. And needless to say, you probably shouldn't try this in a front-wheel drive car. So shift lock can be useful in either rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. You'll see a lot of drifters use it as it's a surefire way to enter oversteer. Rally drivers use it for the same reason. You're less likely to see shift lock on a track, however, say on a touge run, it's almost a guerrilla tactic we could use to get the nose of the car pointed into a corner. More on that later. So, where exactly did the shift lock technique's origins lay? Well, don't act surprised, but as per usual, its origins are in rally racing. There's no definitive leads to the start of this technique like in my other entries into the How to Touge series, link in the top right. However, it's not hard to imagine that some blonde-haired, dead-eyed Scandinavian bloke wanted to find a way of entering a high-speed corner without touching a single braking appliance. In fact, I'd wager that's pretty much how every driving technique originated. Anyway, I digress. I mentioned that I'll be covering how shift lock is useful for both grip and drift styles of driving, and I'll be covering each of these next. But first, I just want to take up to 10 seconds of this video to remind you that only a tiny percentage of my viewers are actually subscribed. So if you're enjoying the video and want to see more assetto corsa touge tutorials, make sure you hit that big red button. Thank you. So firstly, I'll be covering shift lock in the context of drifting, otherwise known as the shift lock drift. Firstly, you need to enter a turn at a speed that is way too high for the car to handle. You should be going fast enough that if you don't initiate a drift, you'll just understeer and wrap your car around a tree. This can seem scary at first, but that is what makes this an advanced method. Entering a corner at too high of a speed and engaging shift lock breaks all of the rules of driving with torque. So this can take some practice. Don't get frustrated with yourself if you can't do it at first. You'll get there eventually. Anyway, so we enter a corner at an insanely high speed. Next we turn into the corner slightly. Then we need to downshift and let the clutch out as fast as possible. Now purists will hate me for this if they don't already, but using the clutch isn't even necessary for this technique. In fact, just pressing the downshift button should work, so long as you don't have rev protection on. It's at this point you should feel the rear end of the car kicking out, so you need to start counter steering. After doing all of the previous steps, your car will either be near the red line or already hitting it. Either way, you're going to need to shift up and enter a drift. If you don't shift up, the car will straighten up or spin out. Your car will redline very quickly as shift lock is engaged at a high RPM. Therefore, you should be ready to shift up again as soon as you shift down. Don't take your hand off the shifter. At this point, you should be away. Carry out a drift as per usual. So to recap, we turn into the corner, downshift, then get on the throttle and counter steer, and then shift back up. It is that simple. So that was how you do a shift lock drift. This is a versatile technique as all that is required is shifting down. However, make sure you do it with damage disabled or your pixel car will likely end up hating you. There's no definitive answer on how shift lock compares to just pulling the handbrake. They each have nuanced pros and cons, but from my experience I can say that I like to switch between the two randomly. Shift lock allows me more control on the entry of a drift. Most of the time in a shift lock drift, the wheels will never actually lock up. Rather, they just slow down. However, a handbrake drift is much simpler to pull out of the bag and requires less action. You're simply just pulling a lever. Personally, I like to use shift lock on higher speed corners, whilst handbrake drifting on the lower speed corners such as hairpins. The best example of using shift lock to manipulate the direction of the car in a touge I know of is Keishi Toushi's run at Gunma. The way Keishi uses the gears to control the car is awesome in the most literal sense of the word. He's constantly shifting up and down, almost like it's second nature to him. He doesn't think about shifting, he just does it. We can see Keishi uses the gears not only maximise every rev, but he also uses it to pitch the nose of the car into the corner without touching the brake pedal or steering into it. Using shift lock to corner in a grip fashion is much more subtle than using it to drift. Rather than locking the tyres fully, we can use shift lock to slow the rear tyres just enough to rotate the rear end of the car. In this sense, it's much like the left foot braking method we covered previously. However, as we already know, shift locking doesn't require braking, technically meaning that it's a faster method of getting the car pitched into the corner. In theory, it's the same as using it to drift. It should be used on high speed corners in which a significant steering action or a light dab on the brake is needed. We turn into the fast corner. However, this time we need to make sure that we aren't too high in the rev range, meaning we won't lock the rears on downshift. This can be a little tricky to instinctually know how high on the revometer you need to be for this technique at first, but it will come with experience. So we downshift and the rear of the car should rotate. If done correctly, you'll be able to carry on through the corner in the current gear without entering oversteer. However, this time, as soon as the car is pointed towards the apex of the corner, we shift back up again and get on the throttle. It's as simple as that. Using shift lock to point the nose of the car towards the apex of the corner is a much faster method of cornering as opposed to braking beforehand or inputting a significant amount of steering. Obviously, this is because braking and steering slows the car down, but also using shift lock as we enter the corner allows us to straighten the corner out massively, thus meaning we can get on the throttle earlier, resulting in a higher exit speed. So that was all you need to know about shift lock. Make sure you support the channel and hit that like button if you enjoyed the video or found it helpful. Let me know what you think in the comments and subscribe for more Assetto Corsa Touge tutorials. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.